Men's mental health is often overlooked, dismissed, or buried under the weight of toughness and resilience. But what if healing didn't mean losing strength, but actually building it?
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
All right, today we're sitting with Dr. Audra Horney, a licensed psychologist who specializes in men's mental health. She works with men who are either stepping into therapy for the first time or bravely giving it another shot after a past negative experience. Dr. Audra's mission is to normalize and destigmatize the therapeutic experience for men, helping them navigate emotions, relationships, and self awareness in ways that actually make sense for them. Beyond her critical practice, she's built a thriving online community dedicated to making men feel seen in their mental health journeys. Today, we'll talk about what holds men back from therapy, why mindfulness and emotional awareness don't mean weakness, and how men can start taking small steps toward better mental health without feeling like they have to be someone else to do it. Dr. Audra, good to see you here. How are you? And Will, good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, great to be here. Dr. Audra, thank you for being here.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited to get into it today.
Yeah, it's going to be a great discussion. And Will, if you would lead us off with that opening grounding practice.
Just do that. We're going to do one breath, Dr. Audra, a way to ground everybody in the practice. So we just maybe close the eyes if you can and just exhale out your breath completely through your mouth. Get empty as you possibly can. And then in your belly, starting in your belly, take a big giant breath in. A little bit more breath. Let's hold at the top for 3, for 2, 1, and exhale that breath out. Nice and slow, and try to relax through that exhale. Yes, and come back, a little movement if you like, a little excitement, because we got another show going on right now. Dr. Audra's in the house, so great to have you, Dr. Audra. John, I'll kick it over to you.
Okay, yeah, well, well, we gotta nip this one in the bud, right? All right, so we were talking about we're talking about this before the show, and Will and I are men, so we're still childish, and we're talking with Dr. Audra about your last name. So let's just hey, let's clear the air here. We're gonna get past this. Her last name is Horny. Everyone, get past it. All right.
My last name is Horney, Horney. It is actually my last name. Some trolls on social media have tried to attack me for otherwise. I married into it. I did not have to endure the trauma of adolescence with this last name, and I married into it before I headed into this area of specialization. So call it what you will, but here I am.
Sounds like a gift. Sounds like a
Mhm.
gift, Dr. Audra, to me.
And
That's
also,
awesome.
guys, please call me Audra. Please call me Audra.
All
Okay,
right,
you got
Audra,
it, Audra.
Yep.
Audra,
Thank you
great.
for being here.
Well, Audra, now that we've gotten that elephant out of the way, so you work specifically with men's mental health, um, and we've talked about this on the show, but maybe some of our listeners don't know, or maybe they're not aware. But what are some of the biggest transformations you've seen in men's therapy, and maybe even before that? What are some of the obstacles that men have in starting therapy?
Sure. I mean, the obstacles are huge, and I see a shift. I'm hopeful, optimistic that things are trending in the right direction, and men's access to mental health is improving, as evidenced by awesome podcasts like the two of you are hosting here and the work you're doing. And there are still tons of obstacles and a big old stigma. Um, and so I'll touch briefly on, I think, the pieces that we talk about most regularly, but then I want to really prioritize, highlight what I see as a big issue that I don't think gets as much attention as it deserves. But first and foremost, I mean, we raise men, we socialize and condition men to be strong, to be tough. You know, it's all those sayings you hear of like, man up, suck it up, don't be a pussy, like whatever it is that like
Yeah,
men are
yeah.
reinforced. And so the idea of and that with be independent, be the lone wolf, right? Like there's power and strength in that. So the idea of reaching out and asking somebody else for help, you know, I'm not even going to call my buddy to let him know I'm struggling. I'm going to reach out to a stranger. Like there's a lot that we're asking men to walk past and dismiss that they've been told to be. in order to ask for help. Um, and so I think that is something that a lot of men carry, whether they are consciously aware of that or not. There's this expectation that a lot of men carry to handle it on my own, to be incredibly self reliant. And so I think that the idea of asking for any sort of help, but particularly mental health support from someone they don't know, can feel like a sign of weakness or a sign of failure. I don't believe that to be true, but that is a reality for a lot of men.
Well, you've been working with quite a bit of men, or many men. Like, so is there like a list of some of the transformative effects when men do pick up, find the courage to get into therapy? Like, what are some of the things that you consistently or see often, by being in therapy with men and talking to them and working their stuff out with them?
Well, I can say that the thing that I see a lot of men, what gets a lot of men into therapy is usually some sort of like critical, traumatic, or tragic incident. It's usually an accumulation. It's typically not the first time something has happened, and a lot of the clients I end up working with have really exhausted their resources in trying to get support or help, whether it be on their own or going to urgent care to try to get support, talking to their primary care physician, maybe even talking to some people in their lives. And therapy is often a last resort. There's a meme, a story on social media that's circled. It's, I don't know if the two of you have heard of it, but it's the farmer in the ER. And it's the idea that when a farmer shows up at the ER, um, the typical pain scale we use is not going to be good enough. He's here. Wait, he's here. The joke is, did he finish the work that did somebody bring him here? He's here on his own and he didn't finish fixing the fence. Like, holy shit, drop everything, grab the cart. Like, this man's on the brink of death. And I talk about how I see a lot of men in therapy as like the farmer in the ER, the farmer in the ER. It's often a last resort. It's often a crisis, whether or not men are going to describe it that way. I think a lot of men will downplay it, minimize it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But the reality is the internal experience is excruciating. And so I think one thing that an additional barrier that I think my field in particular needs to do a better job in addressing is the way that we market therapy to men. I think I talk about therapy as being what I believe to be a fairly feminized space. And I see this in, you can see there are thousands of therapists on social media, and the majority of them are talking about their work with women. The majority of them are talking about mental health or even mental health treatment and support strategies in ways that I don't think always resonate with men. You pull up a therapist's website and it may be very soft and flowery and sweet and feminized. And so, how could we expect men to see therapy as a space for them if they are looking into therapists and these therapists aren't talking about working with men? They're not talking about mental health and struggles the way men experience them. And they're not explicitly saying, here's how I work with men, here's why I support men, here's why this space is for you. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm really intentional on social about calling myself a therapist for men and being very clear about that. Some people may feel like that's redundant because like therapy is for everyone. But the reality that I've witnessed is that a lot of men don't believe therapy is actually for them. And I don't think that we as a field have done enough to make therapy seem like it is an inclusive, uh, gender inclusive resource.
The the farmer going to the ER. I don't know. You watch Yellowstone at all, Audra?
I have not. But I've heard things. Yes. So
It's
is there?
great. Well, there's one character in particular. Well, there's a lot of characters on that show that I can kind of picture in this role where this typical masculine tough guy. And one in particular in the show, his name's Rip, and I can't imagine him going to the ER for anything. And the analogy there is it's definitely perfect. Like men who are the typical tough guy, what everybody imagines as the typical tough guy, is only going to go to therapy when they are in dire need. And I've been there myself, but I have since learned that therapy is a maintenance thing as well, right? Once you have this crisis, whatever it might be, emotionally, mentally, and you're going to see therapists, and then you get to a better place, ideally, then going. It's not like you arrive, right? You don't get to this spot and say, "Oh, now I don't need therapy anymore." Ideally, if you continue the work, that's where a lot of the extra healing that you may not have even known was needed comes. And then you just mentioned, you go on a site. I just logged into your site as you were speaking, and it definitely looks more manly, right? There's clearly a man sitting on a couch here. It's gray. It's not like pastel colors. The font is quote unquote manly, I
Masculine.
guess. It's a masculine font,
Mhm.
Yeah.
if that's a thing. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, I see the difference here. Um, and I love what you're doing. For the guys who are listening to the show now, or maybe for the significant others of guys who may be able to help the guys, what would you say to men right now who may be on the fence about going to therapy?
I'd say go check out my YouTube page, or sorry, go check out my TikTok. I've been told I should be on YouTube. I'm not on YouTube yet. That was a Freudian slip of my subconscious knowing I need to get on YouTube. I would say go check out my page on TikTok because you don't have to follow me. Like, I don't need anything from you, but go to the comment sections because I want men to know you're not alone. Because there are a lot of men who are very actively engaged and showing up in my comments on my page, expressing concerns, talking about their experiences in therapy, saying, like, I finally scheduled with a therapist, and really supporting and celebrating each other there. And I think there's some safety there and the anonymity that you can have on TikTok. But to know you're not alone, to know that you're not alone in maybe having past really negative experiences with therapy and being incredibly skeptical about going back. I see that a lot. That it's not necessarily that all men are just opposed to therapy. A lot of them, again, the tides are turning. A lot of them have given it a chance and had really awful experiences. Like any field, there are a range of providers, right? So unfortunately, that is true. But I do think a piece of this as well is that, my clinical training was multicultural focused, and I did not get any explicit training about how to work with men different than other genders. And so I think there is a lot of work we need to do as a field to be more prepared to meet men where they're at and to help them. There's a pretty terrifying statistic that over 50% of men who die by suicide have seen a mental health provider prior to their death. And so it's not that men aren't necessarily that sure there are more men who could be going to therapy, but men are going and not always getting the support they need. And so if you're curious about therapy and maybe you've been before, if you don't think it would help again, come to my TikTok channel and see what other guys are saying and ask for feedback from them about, if I should start and what it's going to be like and can I trust this?
That's really interesting that you mentioned going to your comments rather than just going to your TikTok, but going into the comments and seeing what other men are saying. I've done something similar. There's a rapper, a Canadian rapper named Dax, DAX, and yeah, you know him. I
Yep.
figured you might.
Mhm.
He's got, I mean, a lot of his stuff is geared specifically toward men, and one of his songs is "What It's Like to Be a Man,"
Mhm.
and when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, I gotta check this guy out on YouTube," and I saw the video, and the video brought me to tears, and then I went into the comments, and holy cow, there was a lot of support for the post, but also a lot of comments from men saying, "This is exactly how I feel. Thank you for putting this out there," and it's interesting that that's where men open up is in the comments on social media. Uh, but anyway, just another comment. Will, over to you, my friend.
No, well, you mentioned the inclusivity of therapy. I mean, it is for everybody.
Yes.
You also mentioned like how the messaging should be different for men.
Mhm.
Um, And so now you've been working with men. So what are some of the things that you do in order to make men kind of fall into the therapeutic space and more comfortable and allowing them to open up to really have that meaningful discussion that's needed in order to really begin to dig into to solve some of the problems?
Sure. I appreciate that question because I've been learning as I've been going. Like I said, I didn't get this training in my PhD program, and so I've been doing this, piecemeal on my own over the
So,
last
so,
10
so have we,
years.
by the way. So have we as a podcast. It's like, how do we really talk to men? Trial and error, right? But go ahead, yeah, please.
Exactly, exactly. And so for me, it's become a really multi-pronged approach, but it starts with my marketing. It starts with my social media presence. Like I am very vocal there and clear about where I stand and what I believe and where my values are, because I see that as this like rapport building process with potential clients. And beyond even just my website. I hope my website is validating and that men feel seen. The men that I work with in particular feel seen by it. But then from there, you can, anybody can say anything on a website. That's easy to come up. You can chat GPT that copy, right? Easy. And it is a different thing for me to show up on social media as a talking head, speaking for minutes, the video after video about where I stand, interacting with comments and, speaking from a really authentic, genuine place. And so I've found that by the time men reach out to me to work with me, they've already been able to develop a sense of trust and rapport with me before I've even directly talked to them. And so what's been amazing is I'm seeing it in that I always have a free intro call with a new client. And I would encourage anyone listening who's looking to start therapy to only work with a therapist who's willing to offer you that free intro call to start. And I'd encourage you to have that with a few therapists who you think you might want to work with, because it's a nice opportunity for you to get a sense of their vibe, their style, the personality fit before you take the step of scheduling. And I do this with men, I do this with any clients I've worked with historically, but I think it's really important to have this intro call with the men I'm potentially going to work with to continue to develop that trust and to make sure this feels like a good fit before you're sitting in my office. I'm not going to assume I am the only therapist or the best therapist for you. Like, this is a collaborative decision that we're making that feels like a good fit and a two-way street. And I'm really upfront, with people with men that I talk to and saying, like, this intro call is a chance for you to ask some questions, for me to give some feedback about how I'd approach this. But I'm really, open to saying, if I'm not the best fit, I'm here to help you find somebody who is. And I think that, allowing men to like have that choice to not make it feel like I'm not trying to like close any sort of sale. Like, we're really starting to build our relationship with each other. And, I've seen that from exposure to me on social media, men are able to open up even in that initial intro call in ways that in the past, before I was on social media, would maybe take men 8, 10, 12 sessions to get there, to talking about things like, it's actually really hard to be a man nowadays, right? Like, saying the things that arguably could get you canceled on social media that are really scary to say to a woman. Men are able to say that in their first call with me because they see what I stand for on social media. And so it has expedited this process in this like really amazing way. And I hope, I'm not just out there like talking to men and supporting men. Like, I'm talking to other therapists. I actually call out therapists somewhat frequently on my social media channels because I think it's important that I challenge them to like look at their website. Do you like working with men? Okay, pull up your website. Do you have pictures of any men on there? Do you talk about anxiety and depression and trauma the way that men experience it? Do you speak specifically to men's challenges? Um, do do you have any training specifically? How do you approach men differently? Because we are trained to be culturally humble and to have this multicultural competence. That is any client that walks through your door. And so I'm challenging therapists to look themselves in the mirror and to examine how you are approaching this work and making sure that if you say you are working with men, that you are creating then an inclusive and welcoming, safe space for them the way you would any other client.
Nice. Now, do you see or do you feel that men gravitate more to female therapists or to male therapists?
I think it is very case by case. I think that um, h- I don't I don't think we can get a fair assessment of that because right now the field is so skewed. It's just a female saturated field of therapy. So the reality is the majority of therapists you're going to find are women. To the extent that, as a woman myself, I could identify 20 different factors that I wanted to find in a therapist. And in my Phoenix area, probably find, 10 of them that specialize in this and identify as that and have been working for this many years and work with they're a mom and they're the easy, right? Men, good luck just finding someone who works with men and says that explicitly. And so I think that it's hard for me to say, well, I think men gravitate towards one or another because I do think it is a personal preference. I think some men really enjoy working with other male therapists because there is an alignment of those experiences. I don't know what it is like to be a man. I was not raised that way. I don't know what it's like to be told I can't have emotions. I generally, right? Like women don't have much permission to maybe express anger in the way that men can. But I don't know what it is like to be a man. And I completely respect that for a lot of men working with a male therapist to get that sort of connection on that level is really valuable. On the other hand, a lot of men s- struggle to be vulnerable with other men. And sometimes there can be that like posturing or that, masking that can happen with other men. Not to say that doesn't happen with women as well, but that can sometimes get in the way of men and opening up and getting what they want fully out of therapy. I mean, I do very, very little virtual therapy because I think for a lot of men, like the ability to even mask behind a screen is a little bit easier than when we're sitting in the office together and then there's that exchange of energy. And so, I can see, like, I just think there are so many layers of like, what's going to create safety for this person? And it's different for everyone. What I want is for men to have more access to more therapists that they see as there for them so that you guys can have more choice and not just say like, okay, well, I want to work with a female therapist and there's one in my city who says she works with men. I guess that's my option. Um, and so I think it's, the more therapists we have saying, I work with men and I love working with men and this men deserve and men can have a safe space in my office and the more options men have to choose a therapist that is the best fit for them.
Could you list some of those unique needs that men have in therapy, or some of the, like, because you alluded to a couple times. I'd just love to hear them.
Sure. I mean, I feel like I can speak most specifically to men I work with who are coming to therapy for the first time or coming back really hardened to therapy because it was a negative experience. Um, my approach with my clients is like, let's understand this. You're here because you're struggling. You're here because you couldn't figure it out on your own because you wouldn't be here if you had those answers. You would have done it, right? You're here because you've tried everything, but you keep falling into the same patterns or you're not finding the fulfillment. I have so many clients I work with who come in and they're like, I shouldn't feel this way. My life looks great on paper. Why am I not happy? And there's this shame and guilt about that. And so my approach is I say a lot to my clients, okay, let's try to be curious and not critical about this. Like let's assume, I mean, my assumption working with my clients is you are resourceful, you are resilient, you are smart. And so I'm going to conclude that whatever you're doing now that isn't working for you worked at some point. You started that at some point because it was about it. You were just trying to get by. You adapted to the situation. It was survival. Like you had to, and it probably worked because the reality is you wouldn't be sitting in my office now with the beautiful partner that you have and the great job that you have if you hadn't figured out a lot of this shit along the way. And so I lead with that validation. And I truly mean it. Like it's not empty. Like I get to know my clients personally so I can say, like, here's what I see. I know you don't see this guy in the mirror, but here's what I see. You've got a lot going for you. And yeah, you're struggling. So let's understand where that's rooted. And the good news, what I say is like the good news is if that's not working anymore, it's probably because your life has actually evolved to a healthier place than wherever those coping mechanisms started. And there's tension now because you could probably let go of some of those escape mechanisms. Like maybe you don't need those vices. Maybe there's more safety in your relationship to be vulnerable. There's tension because you still maybe have that wall up because you had to in those past relationships. And so I I approach the work, it's super collaborative. I think that's really important. I utilize self-disclosure appropriately, always ethically and with the client in mind. But I think I use self-disclosure with my male clients differently than maybe earlier in my career when I was working with more women. Like I talk about struggles I've had. I talk about the fact that I've been in therapy. I talk about the fact that I have been on medication for my anxiety. I talk about the fact that I grew up as a kid who felt like she had to keep her emotions in to make sure everyone else was okay. So I'm not a man with that experience of suppressing my emotions, but I get what it is to mask. Like I share these things because it takes a lot for men to come into therapy and it can be a really vulnerable experience. And I want it to feel like we're working on this together. I'm not this expert above you who has all the right answers. I've got expertise that I hope I can share. You're the expert on you. Let's work on those things together to figure this out, almost taking like a scientific approach. Like, okay, this isn't working. We've got some like lights going off on the dashboard. Like, where's the issue? Like, let's get to the source so we can find a solution that like is sustainable and gets you through and moves you forward and not just that like escape mechanism or that vice, that band-aid that gets you through the moment.
Yeah.
I
Love
was
that.
smiling in the background when you were talking about what you say to men after they're
I was
having
feeling
figured
so
stuff.
comfortable when you said
Well,
that, by the
oh,
way. I felt so comfortable.
for
Yeah, John.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But I've had some of these struggles recently.
Mm.
I've got beautiful kids. I've got a beautiful bride. I've got a good job, and there's still a part that kind of feels, I don't know, empty. And this is something that I've been going to therapy for myself, but I've also opened up to my wife about it. And I've got this dry erase board. And Will, you saw this last week when you were here visiting. And my wife wrote some of the same things that you just said, Audra. It says, "You is smart, you is handsome, you is strong. I love you." So I kept it up there because it's helpful to know that I is smart, I is handsome, I is strong.
And you is they ain't no good English, you know?
So so anyway, so
Those things are, it's simple, almost to the point that it can seem silly, but it's so powerful. I think that the the most meaningful work I do and the majority of the work I do with the men that I work with is not changing them. It's about helping them realize they are already wonderful, that they are enough and like that it's about recognizing what you already are, not changing into who you think you need to be. Um, and so like that is why like I have the fucking best job in the world. Like I just get to meet these amazing people who come in just with like so much to them, and then we're not, maybe we're eliminating some of those escape mechanisms that are arguably not as healthy as they could be, but like the reality is we're just stripping those things away so you can actually find who you already are. And like I mean, I don't think that it doesn't get much better than that. Is like helping someone know that it's not about having to become who you think you have to be. Like you're already that guy.
we've talked about mindfulness clearly. The show is about mindfulness, and I know that you believe in mindfulness in
Yes.
therapy, and a lot of men are totally new to it.
Yeah.
How does mindfulness show up in the work that you do?
It shows up frequently. I I mean, the majority of the men that I work with are never present with themselves. They are always occupied. They're always connected to something else, distracted from their thoughts, their feelings, and sometimes subconsciously and sometimes very intentionally. And so I talk about mindfulness a lot in terms of being with yourself. The number of conversations I have where I ask clients like, are you ever just with yourself without any sort of device, distraction, podcast, screen, conversation? And so many never, right? Not for a minute per day. And the idea of that for a lot of the men I work with is really uncomfortable. Like, not only do I not do it, I don't want to do it. And so, a lot of the conversations I have with my clients is understanding why. Like, how is that serving you? How has it helped you to stay occupied and distracted from yourself? And then in my introduction to mindfulness, something I say often, I feel like I present it, especially to men who have not tried it before. Although you'd be surprised how many have like, oh, I downloaded Calm or I downloaded Headspace or like I've tried it. Like I didn't stick with it, but they're dabbling. Um, but when I introduce it, I say something like, you know, I'm not talking like you're on a mountaintop and your robes are billowing in the wind. Like it does not have to be this like dramatic form of meditation. It is as simple as eliminating some of these distractions for 5 minutes and checking in. And, if we can incorporate some like breathing exercises and we can extend that, great. I'm even reluctant to encourage guided meditation to start for my clients because I feel like sometimes that just feeds into this like, okay, yeah, that'll be productive. Yeah, okay, like I'll check it off my list. Like that's something I could do. And like I'm like, no, I need you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like I want you to wake up in the morning and for 5 minutes before you touch your phone or you do anything else, like breathe and check in. Uh, and I think it's really eye opening for men to realize, no wonder you don't know what you're feeling. No wonder you're not emotional until you're pissed off and flying off the handle. Like you are never checking in. So your emotions are only there when they're powerful enough to bust through the surface or overwhelming enough to like sink you into depression. There's no middle ground. So just even starting with, can we find a few minutes in your day where you don't do anything else? Um, is I think a powerful place to start just to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
for
we
sure.
do actually have a meditation course coming up, on April 27th, so please bring your men, and I'll send an email after this too. We'd love to
I'd
bring
love to.
anybody, yeah. So I mean, we have this course. I mean, it's 9 weeks, and it's what we've seen in this course that's really added a lot of value to the individual practice of meditation is we have this like group learning environment and just hearing from other men and there's men and women in this course, just the struggles that they're having with their meditation just kind of opens more of the door of their mind to just practice. And there's so many incredible benefits to sitting with meditation. These are guided meditations, but like there's it just innumerable benefits that we've seen because you get on the inside, you get to know yourself, you get to know your thought, you get to know your feelings, you get to know all of these societal expectations that are thrown onto us at a very young age, and we begin to unpack them, and you really begin to understand and see who you authentically are and move forward with this kind of wisdom. So we encourage anybody, it's going to start April 27th. Head to mentalkingmindfulness.com to learn more about it. But thanks, Dr. Audra, and please send people over.
I will. And
That'd be so
no
good. Yeah.
no shade to guided meditation. I didn't mean to talk
Oh yeah.
shit.
No, I
No,
get it. I get it. I
no,
get it.
no.
I mean,
It's tough to jump
if you're
right into
just
that.
like, if you're just trying to check off a box and not really dive in to the meditation itself, then it's not going to work. But if you're really there and really trying and really practicing, continually showing up each day to meditate, but also continually showing up the best you can within the meditation you're actually doing, you're just going to learn this. It's when we go through this 9-week course, like we calm people down in the first 3 weeks. We begin to understand, or the next 3 weeks, we have people understanding permanence and how attachment is just so damaging, to the experience. And then we get into loving kindness and self compassion. So you really walk away from this course with just meaningful tools to just navigate through life more effectively and live in more harmony with yourself and everything else. So it's just really, really powerful. And, it's changed my life. It's changed John's life. All the students that we've had over the last year that have done this course, they've really have made quite have created quite a different experience in their own life. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's been great. And well, how about this, Dr. Audra? Like, what about like, how has the work you've done and the men you've seen, has it helped them like redefine, what masculinity actually is, and has it helped them to kind of let go of some of those societal expectations that you've alluded to?
Those are some of my favorite conversations that I have with clients is about masculinity. I very intentionally, I choose not to use the phrase toxic masculinity. Um, uh, and so, to each their own, but I just feel like, unfortunately, because of that, even just the word masculinity has become charged. Like it's like the toxic is now silent.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Yeah,
God
they're
forbid I have a
synonymous.
penis. I have a fucking penis and now I'm a bad person. Like, what?
right.
It's like, it's like,
Exactly.
so,
And so I love these conversations because I think that uh, there are so many influences that we all have. Like I'm influenced by masculinity. Like I have masculine and feminine traits. There's a reason why I work with men. Like I think I have more of like a masculine energy that shows up. And so being able to understand like the influences, not as without some sort of judgment call or whether they're good or bad, but just recognizing like, okay, what are the messages you received? Like, talking to men about what were your earliest influences of what it was to be a man, and who were the guys that you looked up to? Who was the yardstick that you measured yourself to? And what were the messages you received about what it was to be a man or what it wasn't to be a man? Um, and I love being able to talk through what the idea of like healthy masculinity is for my clients. Like what do you feel so aligned with? This, for a lot, it's like protecting and providing and creating safety for the people in my life and security for those around me, making sure others are okay. Like these are beautiful characteristics. And then being able to talk too about their femininity. So many of the men that I work with were incredibly sensitive little boys that learned very young to walk that away. Like
yeah.
that's going to get you picked on, that's going to get you criticized, that's not going to get you the support and attention that you want. Like that's not okay. And so being able to introduce that sensitivity to someone's masculinity, I think is like that's a superpower to be able to hold these like really healthy traits of masculinity while also having this emotional intelligence. And so I love having these conversations too, because I think this is why want so many more of my female peers to like step into this space as female therapists for men. I think there's something really powerful about men being able to have this conversation with a woman. And I think I have a little bit more permission to say, even on social media, but with my clients, to say things like, yeah, like I don't envy you as a man. Like it's really hard. Like you're limited. Like I have this full permission to express myself emotionally, like be proud of my femininity and not feel like I'm this tiny step away from losing that femininity if I step out of bounds. That is a very different thing for men and their masculinity often. Like manhood feels like something you have to earn, and then it's precarious to hold on to it. Like don't fuck it up because you're going to lose that. And so to be able to validate that for men and then to create this space where we can explore that sensitivity and highlight the strengths of masculinity and say, I often joke with my clients, like, the things we talk about in here, the things I claim, the things you claim, like, we're not going to be posting about this on Twitter and expecting to be well received. And like, that's okay. Like, we're just trying to identify what's going to work for you in your life. And we need more permission and safety to have these nuanced conversations if we ever want men to not be dying by suicide at the horrifying rates that they are.
Oh, well, shifting from that, which is, terrible. And I've seen it, I've lost friends, from the military. I've lost female friends to suicide as well. But I'm just trying to count. I know off the top of my head, I know one female friend who has taken her life by suicide, and I know probably 24 men. Um, but that said, I just want to come back and kind of change the vibe a little bit.
Yeah,
When you
sorry.
talked about
I have a tendency to like go dark quickly.
No, I mean, it's like I think we need to speak to the truth of what's going on in society right now. What is it? 22 veterans die every day or
Yeah,
take their
yeah,
life
and
with
I
suicide
think
right
that's
now.
a low
Yeah,
number,
right, right. I
low
mean, it's
estimate.
like it's a real problem, and it's like
Yeah,
by working with someone like you, Dr. Audra, like this can really start to change. And instead of it being a problem or like a stigma of like, oh, I'm in therapy, so therefore I'm a weak man. It's like we need to really make this create the conversation. That's what we've been doing. That's what you're doing, Audra, to really make it seem like, look, we can have health. Like we can have mental health, we can have healthy relationships to ourselves and other people, but it takes some work. We got to get out of the lone wolf. We got to get out of the isolation. We need to wake up, and hopefully, people that are listening, it's like it's a phone call away to start to let go of all those things I just talked about and step into and start being healthier.
Well,
So, John,
well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
can I jump
yeah, go
in
ahead.
for a second?
yeah,
Yeah,
but go
please
Because
do.
for it.
Yeah,
I think that's a perfect opportunity for me to plug the fact that I host a directory of therapists for men. So
there
you
you
can
go.
find
Yeah,
it
we're
Oh,
gonna
how
ask about
cool.
that.
you can find
Perfect.
it on
Yeah,
my website. You can find it on my socials. And it is free for men to use to find, or partners of men or people who love men to use to find a therapist. And it is also free for therapists to join. And so it's global at this point. It's primarily therapists in the United States and some in Canada. But I think that's a great place to start. Like these therapists they follow me on social media. They're aligned with my same values and that this conversation we're having. And so if you are not sure where to start, and it can be really overwhelming to just Google therapists in my area, then check out my directory because these are some phenomenal therapists listed, and tell them Dr. Audra sent you because I want to light a fire under these therapists' ass. Like, I'm not letting you stay on this free directory if you're not showing up and like showing up for these men and doing the work and helping them find resources if you're full. So yes, use it and share it. But I think it's a good place to start.
See, Dr. Travis Goodman's on there.
There,
Yeah,
there's some
yep,
there's some
he is.
great
I'm
dudes
looking at it
on
right now.
there. Yeah, really, really, really great therapists on that list.
we'll make sure we include it in our show notes. So hey, so our producer put it in the show notes. Anyway,
Yeah,
but
so that's
John,
just
yeah.
on Dr. On Audra's website,
Mhm.
moderntherapyaz.com, and then it's in the contact list. But I just got to come back and just add a little levity to things. When you were talking about the yardstick that we measure ourselves against, and all that I could think about was like John Wayne and like Clint Eastwood and Bruce Willis, specifically like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, and then Michael Jordan. I was thinking, like all hyper masculine, which incidentally, we're actually having Dr. George Mumford on in a few weeks. George Mumford is the guy who trained Michael Jordan on mindfulness, trained Kobe Bryant, lived with Dr. J. So it's super cool. Very excited about that episode. That's coming up, and fantastic read. I think Will's got the book there. But anyhow, so like if we were to try to bust some myths for the men that are listening, if maybe 3-5 myths that men have about therapy, what would you say those might be, and how to get past those myths?
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, it's
We're
so
Cut it
overwhelming
many.
down.
you.
Can we cut like okay, let's go over the
The top ones.
3,500 of them.
No, no, the top, the biggest
How much
ones.
time we got? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I despite some of the things I've said about therapists lacking training in this, and there not being as many therapists for men as I think there should be. Like I say that not to scare men away from therapy, but just to speak to the reality. Like I'm not pretending like it's easy to get out there as a guy and find a good therapist. But the reality is there are really incredible therapists for men out there. And so therapy is for men if you want it to be, because therapy is not for everyone. Like, I'm not a believer that you have to go to therapy or you always have to be in therapy. There's so many other sorts of supports and resources. I think what's most important is that men know they actually can't do this alone. Not that you don't
Oh,
have to
yeah.
do this alone. Like, we are not built to do life. We're not built to human in isolation. And so the support you're allowing yourself is critical. And if you want that to be therapy, then that's there. But that may be coaching, that may be, personal training, that may be a group of buddies that you get together with, once a month. Like, that may be your partner. But the reality is that therapy should be included in these options of connection and support. Um, I want to bust the myth that all female therapists hate men and have a bias towards men. I'm not saying that those therapists don't exist. Again, nuance. However, like, I was not trained as a therapist when I was in school for a long fucking time to hate men, to criticize
Have a
men.
clap on that.
No. I was also not trained to turn men into more feminine versions of themselves. So I think these are a lot of the fears that are there. And again, it doesn't help that therapy is like a largely feminized resource, and all the things we've talked about, spoken about already, don't help these fears or these assumptions. Um, but I'm here to say, like, even if I'm just an N of one, and I know I'm not just an N of one, that I can stand behind that. Um, I want to, like, sort of eliminate the myth that therapy is just about like a vent session and talking about your problems and getting some validation and then nothing else. Um, some therapy may be that, but I'm a firm believer that the most effective therapy is one that feels like we are actually identifying solutions and creating change. And I do think that a lot of women, I'm generalizing, but a lot of women do go to therapy looking to be seen. And so I do think therapy can be, for some people, a place to receive validation. And I think for a lot of women, there's like intense relief with being seen. And from the men I've worked with, some are looking for that, but that is like 2% of what we're doing. And it's about being seen and then leveraging that into solutions. And so knowing that therapy is not just a place to vent, it is not just a place to dump your emotions. Like, it is also a place to identify what you want to change and work towards that. It can be very tangible, it can be very behavior and solution focused if you want it to be.
I love it. I love it. And the fear one specifically that you mentioned, fearing therapy, and then like coming in and sitting on a couch or laying on a couch, and all I can think again. Sorry, I'm always a movie or show guy. I think of Tony Soprano and him coming, like, he's a man's man, like a mobster, right? And he's in therapy. That I wonder if there was a spike in men going to therapy back when The Sopranos was
I
popular.
hope so. I hope so.
I remember that episode when he was in therapy and he looks down at the cuff in his pants and he has someone's teeth in his pants. It's just like, I was like, this is a little, it's, I guess if you beat somebody up and go to therapy, you're still a man. I don't know. Right. Maybe that's the
That's right.
messaging,
You
right?
gotta
Or
be a
it's like,
mobster.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Well, what
exactly.
about, so maybe someone that's listening, Audra, like, isn't like, okay, well, maybe therapy someday, right? And I hope everyone walks themselves in to that space. But what are some first steps maybe that you can offer to men to just get in a better mental health, state of mental health, if you will, and maybe this will help them to, make that call, or check out your TikTok.
Well, I have another great thing I can plug for men who might not feel ready for therapy yet. I'm doing my best to like offer like some free resources. I feel like I I want to make sure, like, my mission here is to sort of like expand this like impact in this conversation so it happens in more spaces and more places with more people. So one other thing, it's actually really cool. I thought about this, John, when you were talking about Dax, the song, a few months ago. I think it was like in the fall. On a whim, I created a TikTok video and I just said, like, all right, guys, like, I know you're not all coming to therapy, and I get it, but I know that you guys are turning to music to get into your emotions. Like, I know that is a place where you feel more in tune to how you're feeling, or if you need to cry, or if you want to scream, like, music is an outlet for that. So I was just like, let me know what you're listening to. Like, drop it in the comments. If I get enough submissions, like, maybe I'll make a playlist, right, of all these things. And this post went viral. And so I had thousands of men commenting songs, liking each other's songs, and it was amazing. And so I have a Spotify playlist now of where I've compiled all of these songs, and I asked my followers, I asked TikTok to name the playlist. So there's two playlists now. Because the first playlist was like when you're struggling, when you're sad, when you want to cry, what do you listen to? And so this first playlist of those songs, it has been named by the men, I'm Fine, is the name of that playlist. And then I asked more recently, okay, what about the other side of that coin? Like when you need to pick me up, when you're feeling amazing, when you want to like sing in your car and you just like, you feel that joy when you do, what are those songs? And so now we have the happy version of the playlist, and that has been named No Really, I'm Fine. And so these are both tagged in my link in bio on Instagram or TikTok. You can save them both. I think the original I'm Fine playlist has been saved like maybe close to like 5,000 times. And so listen to it. Like, they're across genres. I do feel like there were a lot of like Gen X submissions. So there may be the highest. I'll tell you that the most requested songs were, I think number one was Nutshell by Alice in Chains. And I think then
Yeah. I love Alice in Chains.
there's a Slipknot song that the name
Oh.
escapes me right now. That was
It's probably on my
number
It's probably
two.
on my playlist.
Yeah. And so, but it is a diverse array of submissions. And if you are not ready to talk to someone, like, maybe you can at least give yourself a little bit more space to like connect with how you're feeling and know, again, like getting back to this idea that you're not alone. Like, these are men just like you who submitted these song requests. Like, these are men just like you who have saved this and maybe listening to this playlist at the same time.
I'm trying to find that. I'm on your Instagram here, but
So if you go to
I'm
my
going
link in
to find that.
bio, if
But
you go to my link in bio,
yeah,
it's under, I think I have it under like a music therapy category.
well, I will also tell you, just in opening up your Instagram, the posts that are on here are super powerful. The one that's catching my eye right here is you brag about deadlifting 405 pounds, but you also carry 20 years worth of unprocessed grief, sadness, and anger. Which weighs more? And then you have one over here, 88% of men don't receive their first flowers until their funeral. And that right there, I mean, that's hit me in the feels. Shit.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've actually gotten flowers, thankfully.
Yeah.
Damn, that's heavy.
Me
That's
too.
heavy.
Mm.
But definitely check out Dr. Audra's social media. Oh my gosh, this is a good one. I'm gonna spend some time today looking through all that. Okay, so just to keep from getting overly emotional here, because I'm a man, damn it.
It's a safe space,
Yeah.
John. It's a safe space.
Oh, look at
So talking about that, flowers, that's part of romance within a relationship.
Mhm.
I'm married to a beautiful bride who I adore. She is awesome. She's probably more manly than I am, in a good way.
no
Um,
comment.
we'll agree.
I'm just kidding. No, I said no comment.
Your silence speaks volumes, my friend. So, well, I want to talk about, in relationships, how does therapy improve communication? How does it improve intimacy, conflict resolution in those romantic relationships?
I think it's so important. I mean, a lot of the work that I do with my clients, it's very interpersonal. And so, as I mentioned, before, when I can reflect things back to a client about my experience with them, I think it's really powerful. And part of the reason that's impactful is because in therapy, you are developing a relationship with your therapist. It is a different sort of relationship than we have with others. It's boundary, there's ethics around that. You're not learning much about me, and I learn a lot about you. So I know that it's different, but I would argue it's a lot more similar to our other relationships than we often give it credit. And so being able to practice opening up and communicating in therapy, it's like the little petri dish for then taking those same experiences and skills and applying them in your relationships outside of therapy. And I feel like, this in particular, heterosexual men who come to therapy and want to work with a female therapist, I think there's something really valuable in practicing talking with me. And granted, and I tell my clients, it is a lot easier to be a therapist for men than it is to be a wife to men. And so I, I struggle. Like, I work on my empathy. I get defensive. I've got my own shit that I bring to my relationship. My husband would immediately vouch for that. And so I make sure that's clear with my clients. Like, you can't expect your wife to be like me. Like, I don't have any of the history, I don't have any of the baggage. Like, I don't have any of my own stuff here. And so that's important to realize. But at the same time, if you've never opened up to a partner about some of these things, if there are things you've kept hidden your whole life, well, at least you get to figure out like what it is you want to say and how you want to say it. And maybe even in an interaction with a therapist, you get to realize the type of support that is most helpful for you. And then you can communicate that to your partner and be more clear about, okay, I just really need you to listen. I don't, I'm looking for solutions, or when I'm struggling, here's what it was helpful for me to hear. And so I think that, being able to not just talk about your relationship in therapy, although that's very common and helpful in a lot of the work I do with my clients is relational about their relationships, whether they be romantic, friendship, professional, or otherwise. But I think then the practice we get existing in a relationship within therapy can be so insightful. I even will offer feedback to clients when I sense them, you know, leaning into maybe more emotional vulnerability. And I'll reflect that to them. I'll say, like, I just felt a shift, and I need you to know that, like, I feel so much more present and connected with you in this moment. And they may be feeling like, oh my God, I felt like it was a bumbling mess, or I don't even know what I said, or I dissociated. And I'm able to say, like, well, I need you to know that as like another person here with you, that felt powerful. And if you can bring that to more of your relationships, like, damn, are the people in your life going to be lucky to experience that with you? And I think that that is the sort of like reflection and like the awkward conversations we can have in therapy that we don't always get permission. Like, there are not many relationships in our life where we can ask for that process to happen. Like, how did it come across as I was sharing that with you? Like, am I making you feel connected and comfortable? Right. But in therapy, we can learn so much about ourselves because we can have that like kind of meta process happening about the therapeutic relationship itself.
That's awesome. Well, you just tapped on or touched on one of those positive shifts from therapy, like vulnerability and just like being that bumbling mess. And it's just like what's amazing about vulnerability is like there's so much forgiveness that comes with it because you're really showing up. Um, what are some of those, maybe some of the other positive shifts you see in men that take the courage to, meet with someone like you and do some therapy? Like, what are some of the other things that happen as they move through the process?
Another emotion that I talk to clients a lot about is shame. A lot of men are carrying a lot of shame. They're not always calling it shame. They're not always recognizing it as shame, but it is a recurring theme. And the reality about shame is that it thrives in the dark. It is most powerful when it is hidden and it is cloaked. And you tell yourself, nobody can know about this because God, what would they think? And so that heaviness that so many men are carrying with them due to that shame, it gets in the way of connection. It gets in the way of vulnerability. It gets in the way of, experiencing the happiness that you think that life on paper should be bringing you. And so to be able to explore that with clients, to have them feel safe enough to be vulnerable and share the things they are ashamed of. And then for me to meet that with empathy, for me to, again, it's not pity. It's not, it's not pulling the victim card on my clients. Like, it's not woe is you. It is, I see you and I'm here with you. And like, fuck, I hate that happened to you. And I can't, like, that's amazing. You've held this for so long. Like, what is it? What has that felt like? Like being able to just see someone past like the mask that they've felt like they've had to wear to hide the shame. And then clients feeling so much relief after that. Like there's so much fear that reinforces us hiding those things we are ashamed of. Like I said, shame wants to be hidden. And so there's a fear, like shame convinces us, like, you can't let anyone know about this because they might never want to talk to you again. If they're never going to respect you again, they're going to see you as a completely different person. And so to be able to take that risk in therapy and realize, like, we're good. Like I, I respect you. I respect, yeah, you're alive. We're good. I haven't canceled you. Like, I'm not kicking you out of my office. Like, we are good. And for men to then realize like the physical relief, like a lot of men don't realize, like, because of this like disconnection often with their emotions, because we don't teach men to be very in tune to their emotions. So there's a disconnection there. They don't realize the impact those suppressed emotions are actually having on them, the ways it's showing up physically, the ways it's manifesting, and the way it's reinforcing maybe some of these escape behaviors until they have a chance to move past it, to let go of some of that and to move on from it and to realize, like, holy shit, like I actually slept that night after our session. I'm seeing things. I'm not blaming myself for that. Like, I'm realizing like that other person let me down. Like, that's not on me. And like the freedom that you get from unlocking, and I think that's, the danger of that lone wolf isolation that can happen. Like when it's just us in our own head, like that gets nasty quick for anyone. Um, and so that transformative process to realize, like, one, like to name the emotions, to understand it, because like I said, a lot of men aren't naming it. They're not coming in saying,
Name
I'm
it to
just,
tame it.
you're
Yep.
right, feel
Yep.
it to heal it.
Yep.
And
Yep. There
so
you go.
to name it and to understand it. And I do a lot of that education, like even helping my clients understand there's a difference between shame, guilt, embarrassment, and humiliation. And so to be able to understand the differences there and to recognize the function of these emotions, like that's empowering to be able to know what's going on for me. Because if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. And once we have more nuance to our emotions, like I'm going to cope differently if I'm pissed off about something versus if I'm grieving about something. If I'm feeling lonely or I'm feeling sad, like I'm going to choose a different path towards coping. But if men are not connected to those emotions, you're not able to access the solutions. So, like, that ability to recognize the function of our emotions, I think, is so powerful. Like, again, that's like a lot of the education I do with men is like, I'm not just, my goal here is not to get you to cry. Like, this is not my MO, is to just like, let's pull all the shit out of that storage closet that you've been locking everything into, and then we're going to make a mess, and then you're going to leave here and feel worse. Like, no, it is very intentional. Like, let's figure out what the fuck you stored back there for decades. Let's call a spade and understand it, because then once we know what it is, we can find a solution for you that is actually going to help.
Wow.
I've got a lot of
Powerful.
stuff in my storage.
Yeah.
I'm a hoarder. Just like
Yeah,
just
a lot of
tons
you
of
are.
stuff
Me
hoarded in
too.
there.
A lot of
Me
you, and
too.
a lot of
And
you
there's
have like a ring of janitor keys. You don't even know how to unlock
oh
it.
my
So
God. Yeah, I know. Still looking for the fucking key, right? It's like, I can't
Which
find the
storage
key.
one is mine?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I know. And there's a lot of hammers out there too. A lot
Yeah,
of hammers out there.
like they seem like every pocket you pull from, there's a hammer. So
Yeah, yeah.
I get it.
Well, we're gonna close in a bit, but like, tell us what's next for you. Like, what's coming up for you? I mean, I'm so incredibly inspired by what you've created. How the messaging you're bringing for men, you're bringing more men into this conversation. Social media is an incredible way to do that. Just like it is easy in the comments and stuff. So, I mean, I love that you're pushing the envelope into this. And so, what's coming up for you, and how can we help you to get that out there?
Well, I appreciate you asking. This year, I'm all about just like leaning into the things that are lighting me up, and so I'm really I'm happy that like the I have a private practice in Phoenix, Arizona, and that feels like locked in. I am on a wait list right now, but if anyone listening is interested in working together, you can always add yourself to my wait list to get an update when I am accepting new clients. Um, but that feels like really locked in, and now I'm kind of like opening myself up to whatever may come my way. It's talking to guys like you, and then just getting more connected, seeing how else can I get these conversations happening, because I think it needs to go beyond just what I'm saying on social media, because there's only so much I can say in 60 seconds, and there's only so much nuance you can have in a debate in the comment section. And so to be able to have more like long form sort of dialogues about this, I think is really, really important. So I'm hopeful that there will be more opportunities for me to continue to connect and to encourage both, men who are hesitant but have wanted support, don't know where to find it, and helping them in that direction. And also, as I said, really tasking my peers in the field of therapy to step up and to do more. So this year is about wanting to just lean into and say yes to the things that I'm excited about. And I'm a I'm not someone who has like the 1 year plan, the 5 year plan, I'm very much like am I lit up by it? Do I feel excited about it? And then like I let my intuition guide that. And so far it served me. I like to say that I'd rather fail at something I love than be committed to something that I hate. And so that's how I built my practice. That's how I developed my website. That's how I show up on social media. It's like it's authentic, it's real, it's from a true place, because that is what flows. And I'm just gonna keep doing that through this year and hope it leads me in the right direction,
Yeah, and it's obviously resonating with people, I mean, for sure.
which is
So, I mean, how
amazing.
about, like, website, social, like, please just let
Sure.
us know where we can find you.
Best place to find me is on Instagram or TikTok. If you are a guy listening, I would encourage you to follow me on TikTok. Like I think that's where the majority of my content is born, and then Instagram has a bit more of the static content and some educational things over there as well. But if you're looking to get into the weeds and the nitty gritty, have the conversations, like TikTok's the place. And I'm thank you. That's probably important. Dr. Audra Horney on both Instagram and TikTok.
Dr.Audra.Horney at Dr.Audra.Horney. I'm looking at it right now.
And we'll
Yeah.
get that in the show notes too, for
Yep. I've
sure.
got it already.
Thanks,
So
John.
super, super awesome conversation,
Yeah,
Audra.
this
Thank you
is a
so much
really
for
talk
being
about
here with us.
we had started the show with, like, we just wanna have fun and have a conversation. This is a fantastic conversation. Like, I mean, I just it really flowed, and, like, and it just really lit us up with so many gems and jewels about, like, this space that so many men struggle with. So, thanks for making it so easy to listen to, but also so inspiring to continually connect to, and hopefully more men look in this direction. So
I hope so too. Thank you guys for inviting me on and having like these are the conversations I love. I told you before we started pressing record, like if it can be conversational and just flow and be anecdotal and real, like that's my sweet spot. Like that's how I think these conversations have to exist. Like we got to get out of academia, and we got to get out of like the polarized all or nothing conversations, and just allow it to be real and somewhere in the messy middle. So I'm glad that it was, this is what it is like to work with me. Like we laugh, we cry, we swear, we joke, we circle back. I ask you about your trauma. Like we do it all. And so I love that we got to hang out in this space together today.
Awesome. Well, we like to wrap the show up. We started off with a grounding practice, and we like to wrap it up with a grounding practice. Especially after everything that we've discussed has been an emotional roller coaster, which has been awesome. I would pay to go on this roller coaster again, and I will probably
me
listen
too.
again when it does come out. But hey, let's get grounded so that we can go into the rest of the day as our most true, authentic selves. So, if closing your eyes is available and comfortable to you, I invite you to go ahead and do so. Otherwise, just soften your eyelids, And let's just bring our attention to our breath, noting it. And let's begin with an exhale. Emptying out and bringing that navel to your spine. And then a nice, long, slow, deep breath in, holding full at the top. And releasing. 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 And let's bring some nice, simple movement back into the body, rolling the shoulders, maybe rolling your neck out. And if your eyes were closed, go ahead and blink them back open. And this has been awesome. Audra, thank you again so much for being here. Fantastic conversation. Will, great work. I appreciate you, brother. Love you, brother. And I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up.
I mean, I said everything I had to say. Just so much gratitude, so much appreciation for this conversation, everything you're putting out there in the world. And anyone that's listening, like, please, like, there's a reason you keep listening to this show. There's a reason that you keep showing up in this space. And maybe it just takes a little more courage to take one more step to move in the direction of who you can be, and also to understand what's getting in the way. So what is that step going to be for you? And I leave that up to you.
There you go.
So thank you,
Thanks
Dr.
for
Audra.
listening, everyone. Until next time, take care.
Thank you,
Peace.
everybody. Peace. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.